Hello, I'm Dr. Sri Banerjee, core faculty for the College of Health Sciences and Public Policy at Walden University. In this segment, I'm going to be going over a brief overview of the field of epidemiology. Epidemiology first got its start in London, England, when John Snow in the mid-19th century was looking for an answer for cholera. He went through all the pump sites of the water pumps and tried to see if this was the problem. And surely enough, he did see that these are the areas people were contracting cholera the most. And he did one of the first geospatial studies. Of course, as you know, geospatial know-how is something that I take interest in. Even though John Snow is considered the father of modern epidemiology, there's others that go unnamed. For instance, Florence Nightingale, she went into the front lines of the Crimean War and closely documented the mortality rates from different areas. So one of the first epidemiological studies were conducted by Florence Nightingale, John Snow, and then the father of modern social epidemiology, who is W.E.B. Du Bois, who conducted experiments in the city of Philadelphia. So those are the three names that are considered who was there at the inception of this discipline. So now that we have gone over the history of epidemiology, it's important to understand the study types, the levels of evidence, and then the measures of association. So what are the study types? The main gold standard that we consider is the randomized controlled trials. And one of the reasons that it is so important to conduct these is that there's blinding going on, either single blinding, where the patient or the one of the individuals, a group of individuals, are blinded as to the which one is placebo and which one is the treatment group. Systematic review meta-analyses, this is a conglomeration of many different studies and an ability to understand what is going on in all levels of evidence. Then you have something called cohort studies. So this can be prospective or retrospective, and this is looking at longitudinal time periods. Then you have cohort studies, of course, then you have case control studies. And these case control studies, you have either controls that are at a higher rate than cases, and so you can control the two and understand what is going on. And then finally, cross-sectional studies. These are studies that I've conducted a lot of. These are inexpensive to study, and however, the disadvantage is that it's difficult to establish causation. So the most you can do is understand the association between the two variables. So calculating measures of association. The main ones that you want to look at is odds ratio and relative risk ratio. And the odds ratio typically is calculated from cross-sectional studies and then case control studies. The cohort studies, relative risk is the main measure of association. So now let me show you how to calculate odds ratio. Odds ratio is considered a calculation where you multiply A times D first and then divide that by B times C. So if you consider A and then to the right B and then below it C and D, then A times D divided by B times C. That's odds ratio. Now relative risk ratio is A divided by A plus B, all divided by C divided by C plus D. Let me go over that again. For relative risk ratio, it's A over A plus B, all divided by C over C plus D. And one of the examples that are provided here is that of cigarette smoking and lung cancer. So summing this all up, Measures of associations are important to calculate for each study type. Strengths and limitations make one more appropriate than the other. And the levels of evidence is important to consider when selecting the type of study. I hope this has given you a brief synopsis. I wanted to show and end with some of the articles that I helped co-author. One of those, which I conducted the analysis on, was a meta-analysis that we published, Prevalence of Psychosocial Stress and its Risk Factors Among Healthcare Workers in Nigeria, a systematic review and meta-analysis. And then Determinants of Access to Low-Cost Ultrasound Services Among Pregnant Women in Rural Areas of Kefi, Nigeria. So these are two examples of meta-analyses and studies that were conducted, cross-sectional studies, in order to provide some evidence of what is going on between the associations. So again, this is the synopsis of epidemiological studies. I hope this has provided you with the overview. And if you want to do more research, then you can do so. Thank you for listening.